Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to another edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Huss and Remo with you. We got a game tonight, late night. Get a nap in, people. 9 p.m. tonight from the West Coast in Rogers Arena in Vancouver. It is the Canucks, the desperate Vancouver Canucks, and the high-flying Winnipeg Jets is part of a relatively busy slate in the National Hockey League tonight. We are going to be all over this one. Listen, the Canucks have been the most interesting team maybe in the league, certainly if you like drama. We spoke with Matt Sekeres a month or two ago about everything happening with JT Miller and Elias Paterson. We know how that ended up, and we know where the Canucks are right now, in the middle of a 4-team dogfight where the team that survives for that 8th wild card in all likelihood will be coming to Winnipeg for game 1 and 2 of the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs. So maybe a little more intrigue considering this is a potential first-round playoff matchup, but still a lot of work left to be done for Vancouver, who's dropped a couple big games at home as of late, including their last outing to the charging Utah HC. So Matt Sekeres is going to jump on. Jeff Hamilton as well coming up today after Matt. We'll get Hammer's thoughts on the Jets post-deadline, where they're at, and some of the other big stories in and around the local scene. A little bit of a Bomber update, although not that there's been much to update on. It's been pretty quiet at this point of the offseason for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. And we're going to welcome in Julia Arnold and Katreena Bentley, two of the All-Stars from the national champion Bison women's volleyball team. And stepsisters as well, playing, of course, for their dad, the legendary head coach Ken Bentley, who just won a national championship in his 39th year on the sidelines for the Bison. So I'm looking forward to that. And then as an added bonus, our own Connor Hrabchak is out in Vancouver doing his first road game. And he's at the skate right now. He'll join us in the second hour after the Jets have finished up, with a bit of an update for you coming out of the morning skate, heading into tonight's game, which happens to be Jet star forward Kyle Connor's 600th game in the National Hockey League. We'll dive into that, hear from Davis Payne and Kyle Connor coming up in just a minute. Hey, welcome to everybody in chat. Hit that thumbs up button if you haven't already, and make sure you're subscribed to the channel. And a big shout out to all the podcast listeners joining us a little later on before puck drop tonight. A huge thanks to the sponsors that make Winnipeg Sports Talk happen each and every day. Of course, our friends at Coolbet Canada just had a riot with Jake and Pat from Coolbet doing our March Madness spread pick draft over in the lock shop. If you're into March Madness, you can check that out over at the EST channel or subscribe to the podcast where you get a WST. We'll let you know. I'll put together a WST parlay for this game tonight, and maybe we'll have a little more Kyle Connor on it, considering his milestone game tonight. Also, a huge thanks to Princess Auto, Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge, Manitoba Battery, and St. Vital Dental, Canadian Club, Rollies Transfer, Wallace & Wallace, F Apparel, fansfirst.ca, Little Brown Jug, Boston Pizza, Royal Sports, and the Winnipeg Jets. Couple things just before we bring in Michael Remis. We added more tickets for our final WST game of the month. They're going quickly, so if you want to join us in Section 316, Friday, March 28th against the New Jersey Devils for our final game of the year, where we look to go a perfect 6-0 as a group, jump on those now before they're gone, because I'm not sure we'll be able to get more. What you're going to want to do is go to winnipegjets.com/WST. Click on that. And of course, your ticket does also include a beverage of your choice, which you'll be able to access through the Jets 360 app. And speaking of the Jets in Vancouver tonight, Thursday night, 8 p.m., it's the Jets and the Edmonton Oilers. And we're teaming up with our friends at Little Brown Jug and Boston Pizza for our second WST watch party of the year. We packed BP Polo Park earlier this season and had a great time We hope to do it again. And we're heading up McPhillips on Thursday. Boston Pizza Garden City on McPhillips. Make a plan to join us. We'll have some great prizes. We'll have some fun trivia games in between periods. And most of all, we'll bring a whole crew of Jet fans together to get loud and hopefully see the Jets take out the Edmonton Oilers. So Thursday night, Boston Pizza Garden City, 8 p.m. Hope to see you there. And it's great to see you again, Michael Remis. Come on in and let's get this show on the road. What's going on?
What's going on? I'm doing okay, Huss. It's baseball opening day. Pretty pumped. Had a bit of a snafu with my baseball draft.
I was about to say, how did you make it through?
Yeah.
Some people were out enjoying St. Patrick's Day last night. Others were dealing with technological disasters as it pertains to their fantasy league.
Gonna be honest, it's hard for me to do the show, how rattled I am. Been running this baseball auction draft for 15, 16 years, and last night mid-draft, the website Fantrax went down for 2 hours and had to scramble, decide are we gonna continue and possibly go to 2 a.m. or reschedule. And scheduling a draft, Huss, is you're going to have to schedule playoff hockey drafts or whatever. It's the biggest pain in the ass of being a commissioner, and to have to, have it go so smoothly, setting up this date months ago, horrible. So I'm rattled. I'm not in a good place today doing the show.
Remis, I was out, enjoying St. Paddy's Day, watching a bit of the hockey last night, and I got a DM or a text from Remis letting me know what was going on here. And then I spent the next hour just searching Fantrax on X. Seeing people losing their minds last night.
I'm just it sucked. So, took out a whole evening, wasted, and I got to find another evening to do this. So anyways, but they did kick off baseball in Japan this morning, but we are looking forward to Jets. I don't know. Do people want to hear about my misery today? I am bringing it into the show with me. I should probably leave it at home.
Yeah. Check it at the door. We just thought we'd acknowledge it. If Remis looks a little antsy today,
Not
it's because Fantrax screwed their draft last night, and now they're on to Plan B. We did. Baseball season's officially underway.
Yes.
And I'm officially 1-0 betting. I think I'm going to bet the run line on every Dodgers game this year.
It's a good move.
1-0 so far, plus 108 last night. They beat the Cubs. I believe it was 4-1. But, of course, the main event tonight is Jets and the Vancouver Canucks. And I see a message in the chat. Coachy 51. I guess Coachy's out there in Vancouver. Any WSTers, Jet fans that are listening, that are at the game, Coachy says, any WSTers who want to meet up at the game tonight, I suggest the Margarita Bar on the 300 level between the first and second period. I'll be there. That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, if any of you guys do get together, snap a pic, fire it over to us on social media, on Insta, on X, in the Discord. Would love to see how everyone's enjoying the game, and of course, Connor will be at the game tonight as well. He's going to join us a little later on tonight. Remo, big night for Kyle Connor. 600th game in the National Hockey League. And I mean, listen, he's been pulling fans out of their seats his entire career, but this year, a really special one for Kyle Connor. He's already tied his career high in assists of 49 through only 68 games. He's got 36 goals on the season, which is his second best total, only shy of his 47 goals in 21-22. And at 85 points with 14 games remaining, he is on pace to have his most productive season ever when it comes to points. And of course, has been a mainstay in the top 10, even the top 5 of points in the NHL this year. Kyle Connor, I mean, a big night for him with the milestone. I wouldn't be surprised to see him on the score sheet as well. Of course, he had a hat trick in the first period when these teams recently played.
Yeah, looking back at their last game, Huss, it was back January 14, and I have it right here. 6-1 final for the Jets. Kyle Connor with the hat trick in au natural fashion, I believe was the call from Paul Edmonds. And the Jets, I mean, the game was done at that point. Vancouver was going through a lot of off-ice stuff, which we've talked about all season with Elias Paterson and JT Miller. And yeah, the Jets rolled them 6-1. And Kyle Connor, I mean, what a season he's having. His career high, you mentioned 93 points back in 21-22. Can he break 100? And that would be a Jets Thrashers franchise record. Marian Hossa in 06-07. He had 100. And it, honestly, I see Eric in chat. He says, feels like yesterday Casey got into the NHL, or am I just getting old? And you look at Kyle Connor's 600 career games, his first full season in the NHL, 17-18. He played 20 games in 16-17. I do remember him coming in studio with you and Jack Roslovic at the old station and remembering how young they seemed at the time. And I mean, he's lit the NHL on fire since he's entered the league. And I mean, that goal Sunday night against Seattle, I mean, that was as good as they come. Burning everyone, cutting to the net with speed, and putting one roof. Like, it was just such skill from him. And again, he's on a historic season for him: 36 points, 36 goals, 49 assists, 85 points. His career high, 93 points. So again, so many guys on the Jets having career highs. So shout out to Kyle Connor. Looks to build on his, into game 600.
He's come such a long way, of course. Signed out of the University of Michigan after that incredible season. And then in that first year, he came in, and so the Heritage Classic was in 2016. He played 20 games that season, but spent the majority of the year with the Manitoba Moose, and really did excel. Scored 25 times in 52 games. But then the next year, if you recall, Reem, he didn't make the team right away. And he went to the Moose for 4 games, scored 3 times, got the call up, and never looked back, and ended up being a 30-goal scorer, ostensibly as a rookie. I'm not sure does 20 games count as a rookie season? I don't think so. So I think the 17-18 season technically was his rookie year. And of course, got his first taste of playoff action that year as the team went to the conference final. I will say this: as much as the points are there, Kyle Connor's game is so much more complete this season. And both he and Mark Scheifele, who had their issues in their own end in the past, or maybe had been less committed to the full 200-foot game, their level of tenacity on the forecheck, back check now, has really ended up being a huge boon for their line, as it's turned into a ton of opportunities moving forward, in the offensive zone. And I think they've sort of fed off that. And obviously the chemistry they've got with Gabriel Velarde has been special to see. And of course the power play. What can you say about that? Kyle Connor, a huge, huge part of that. Davis Payne spoke a little earlier, and as the team comes into Vancouver off of these last couple wins, feeling very good about themselves and very comfortable in their spot in the division Western Conference standings. Much of the topic was on the 600 games of Kyle Connor, and here's what Payne had to say about the man the fans call KFC playing game 600 in the Bigs.
Well, it's obviously an impressive milestone. For me, there's sort of 2 views on it. Coaching against him from afar, you recognize just what a dangerous threat he is offensively. For me, coming in here this year and seeing him play this year, he's brought an all-around game that's really, really been impressive with and without the puck. Defensively, he's now evolved in some penalty killing minutes, and so even though it's 600 games, he's still evolving as a more and more complete player with the ability to score when he gets a small chance. So he's a good pro, and hopefully there's many more.
All right, so there's Davis Payne on Kyle Connor's 600th game. Of course, Cole Perfetti Hopes to follow in the footsteps of Kyle Connor with an incredible, long, very productive career. Got a little ways to go. Cole just recently played game number 200. He's actually at 208, so he's 392 back of Kyle Connor. But Perfetti talked about the player that KFC is and the example he sets with the Jets.
There's things he does that not many people can do, so it's hard to replicate, but just trying to find the ways that he goes to the net, and he can score in all different ways. He's one of the league's best goal scorers, and I think being able to just sit back and watch what he does on a daily basis to find different ways to score. I mean, he's not a one-dimensional guy. He can, score on a breakaway, score on a one-timer, in front of the net, whatever it is. He's got plenty in his arsenal, and so just trying to learn from him. Just watch him where he goes, finds those spots, because he is one of the league's best goal scorers. So it's fun to be able to, just sit back and watch and learn from him.
No, it's listen, Cole Perfetti's been knowing where he needs to go to get in those spots to score. Big goal against Seattle, right up in the blue paint. But of course, Kyle Connor, knowing that it is 600th game, he was asked about the significance of getting to the milestone tonight in Vancouver.
Well, it's
I knew it was coming up, but nice to know it's tomorrow. But obviously, just think about who's helped me along the way, the long journey. You always like to reflect on milestones, but at the end of the day, big match here tomorrow night, and focusing on that.
I wanted to ask about the goal that you score in regulation against Seattle yesterday. Is that kind of one of those situations where you kind of saw that Seattle's defenseman at the top of the zone was kind of all by himself, and if you guys get that block that Morgan Barron gets, that you might have an opportunity to spring out the other way? Yeah,
it's all those little reads that happen in a split second. Just before that, Montour's up the ice, the D-man in, and he's usually playing the right side, and he's down low. If you get a bump on him, hold him down there. It's only one D-man at that point, and I was coming over and saw Bears got a block, and obviously credit to him. That was a great defensive play, and as soon as I saw that, we had possession, and there's a little bit of ice, and just trying to take advantage of what I saw, and he was able to make a great pass.
So there's Kyle Connor speaking on game number 600, and of course the brilliant goal he scored against the Kraken to help the Jets come back in their 3-2 OT win on Sunday night. Back to Davis Payne and back to tonight's game. Here's Payne on tonight's hosts, the Vancouver Canucks, who come in a pretty desperate situation in the middle of a crazy fight for that final wildcard spot.
Like we've done all year is focus on that next game, and you're going to get different situations as this year starts to wind down. Teams that are still fighting in it, still fighting for it, of which Vancouver is very much one of those teams. So there's a hunger and an intensity that we've got to make sure that we recognize and match. The last time we played them, the game, even for the first, if you look at the first 4 or 5 minutes, was probably tilted towards our net. We were just able to finish off a couple plays, and that seemed to kind of take the wind out of their sails. But they're a hungry, desperate team, but we're trying to establish our level of play each and every game. Tomorrow's no different.
All right, we'll get to more on the Canucks with Matt Sekeres coming up in just a couple minutes. Yesterday, if you were on the show, we played the jacket presentation from the Jet Room. Cole Perfetti was referred to as Little Jimmy, and of course, Dylan Sandberg, known as Big Jimmy. They're good pals. They're roommates, and both have been stepping up in a big way lately for the Winnipeg Jets. Here's what Davis Payne had to say about Dylan Sandberg and Cole Perfetti's recent contributions.
Both guys have really sort of grasped onto an identity for a player, and I think that's always an important piece. And once you have that, you can add layers to it and build upon it. But it's really important to have that as a foundation. And I think both guys have, certainly in my short time, have discovered that and can build off of that going forward. Right.
All right, Davis Payne, assistant coach of the Winnipeg Jets. Another player that I'm sure the coaches have loved as much as the fans have has been Luke Schenn, who was acquired by the Jets at the trade deadline, along with Brandon Tanev. Davis spoke about, Luke Schenn reinventing himself at this later point in his career and the presence that he brings to the Jet Blue Line?
You know, the game doesn't allow you to be one-dimensional or even two-dimensional and then stay the same as you move throughout the course of your career. I mean, you have to come in and learn not only a different role, but perhaps a different element of special teams, a different elite skill to separate yourself and sort of master that so that you can continue to play, you know, towards the 600 for KC and beyond. And then Schenner's gone beyond that, obviously. But there's a constant evolution as the game changes and you sort of age. And, you know, there's always roles that you need to figure out how to fill and establish value for yourself.
Davis Payne there on Luke Schenn. And, you know, and speaking of Schenn, listen, I know that the word culture is probably overused. But there's no doubt that the culture change over the last few years in Winnipeg is a huge reason why this team has been able to do what they've accomplished so far this season, sitting at the top of the NHL standings. And when you bring in a player, you want them to fit in. It seems like Luke Schenn has fit in seamlessly, but here's what Davis Payne had to say on how Luke Schenn has ingrained himself into the Jets locker room early on.
We looked at it. We had long conversations as coaches as to what we felt might be an added benefit, and you know, you can add lots of pieces, but we were very careful about making sure that pieces fit, and I think that can sometimes get a little bit overlooked as opposed to what the name might say on the marquee. I mean, these guys fit our group, and we really like what we have moving forward.
All right, so there is Davis Payne speaking earlier. Jets on the ice probably in just a couple minutes. Connor Hrabchak will join us in about an hour after the Jets have finished up with the latest on tonight's game. Coming up in just a couple minutes, we're going to be speaking with Matt Sekeres. Let me give a big shout out to our friends at Rolly's Transfer, gang. If you have a move planned in 2025 as the spring and summer is just around the corner, take as much of the stress out of it as possible with our friends at Rolly's, family owned and operated for over 60 years and the most trusted name in moving in Manitoba. Why don't you get the white glove treatment that Rolly's is famous for on your next move? Now, what you're going to want to do is head on over to Rollies.com. Top right corner, you'll see the request an estimate tab. Hit on that. And in the promo code, put in WST, first things first, for a special discount for Winnipeg Sports Talk listeners on moving services and moving supplies. And then let them know when you're moving, where you're moving to, and what you're planning on having moved. And the friendly staff at Rollies will turn it around quick with a great quote and get you locked in for that white glove treatment that Rollies is famous for. For your next move, make it Rollies. Family owned and operated for over 60 years and the most trusted name in moving in Manitoba. Find out more, request an estimate today over at Rollies.com. Hey, there's a lot of spring cleaning happening, maybe on your property, maybe at your home. How about in your mouth, gang? Has it been a minute since you've been to the dentist? If you need some dental work or just a spring cleaning on your mouth, why don't you pop by and see our friends, Dr. Terry and his great staff at St. Vital Dental Center, just over out of downtown at 167 St. Anne's. Beautiful new facility with an incredible staff along with the great team of dentists, free parking in the back, and a dental experience that will be as good as any that you've had. And of course, they do everything and work on everyone as they've been taking care of Winnipeggers for generations, from 6 months old, just getting teeth, all the way up to 90 plus customers. They do it all, including things like dental implants. You can find out all of the St. Vital Dental Center services at their website at stvitaldental.ca. You can also give them a call at 204-233-5164 to pop in, say hi to Dr. Terry and the gang, and get that spring cleaning as well. And hey, shout out to Donnie and the gang at Manitoba Battery, great partners of ours for many years. We're just about at the finish line of this Winnipeg and Manitoba winter, and Manitoba Battery's been giving local people the best deals on batteries for their cars and trucks throughout the winter. The best prices in town, period, beating the pants off the big box stores. And now as we transition, I mean, you may still need car or truck batteries. That never changes. But as you get ready for fishing season, the lake, maybe your quads or ATVs, just know that if you need batteries for literally anything, Manitoba Batteries, where you can shop local, get the best prices in town and the best service, as they'll deliver those batteries to you for free anywhere inside the city of Winnipeg perimeter with any purchase over $60. It is just that easy. Pop down and see them at one of their 2 locations, Logan Avenue or Dovercourt Drive, or order online today at manitobabattery.com. And just before we bring in Matt Sekeres, cheers to our friends at Canadian Club. You know, there's a little bit of whiskey poured around the city last night for St. Patrick's Day. But as we move forward, when you're thinking whiskey, keep it Canadian. The Standard, since 1848, Canada's finest Canadian whiskey, Canadian Club. Available at your local Manitoba liquor marts with the original, the 100% rye, the Canadian Club Classic. If you're thinking whiskey, make it Canadian Club, The Standard in Canada, available at your local Manitoba liquor marts. All right, Jets Canucks tonight. The Canucks have been the soap opera team of the National Hockey League season. There's been some big changes since we last spoke with Matt Sekeres. One thing that hasn't changed is the Canucks are in the middle of a dogfight. It'll be a desperate team when they play the Winnipeg Jets tonight. Let's head up to Vancouver right now and welcome in from Sekeres and Price, our pal Matt Sekeres. Matt, great to have you back on Winnipeg Sports Talk. What's going on?
Morning. How we all doing today?
We're good to go. Things are good in the peg right now.
Yeah. No kidding.
After the weekend that the Jets had, and particularly that game on Friday, they have a vice grip on first place in the Central and the West, and now it's time to finish the job and get ready for a different playoff outcome than they've had in the last couple of years.
Yeah, you guys are playing all these empty calorie games between now and April. Like, for the Canucks, this one has meat on the bone, man. Like, they're in this dogfight for the final wild card in the West. And I remember what it was like to cover a team that is hunting the President's Trophy as opposed to the final playoff spot. So looking forward to this evening. Boy, the Canucks really need it. That was a really bad loss to Utah on Sunday because that was a direct competitor that you've let back in the playoff race here. St. Louis, their schedule is so simple down the stretch. You got to feel like they're going to win a good number of games, and Calgary's right there as well. So, 4 teams fighting for the final wild card spot, and the Canucks need every point they can muster here in the final 15.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that game against Utah. I mean, Utah all of a sudden, we've got 4 teams within 2 points. Now, obviously, a couple teams have games in hand right now, namely the Calgary Flames, but they lost last night. Like, for a while, Matt, we were sort of looking at Vancouver and Calgary battling for it, but with the play of both of the Canadian teams, Utah and St. Louis, as you mentioned, are right there in the middle of it. It is now a 4-horse race.
Well, and St. Louis, the schedule is awfully favorable here, Hustle. They got Nashville 3 more times, including tonight in Music City. They've got Chicago left on the schedule. The Canucks just finished with Chicago. And if it all comes down to it, they've got Utah at home on the final day of the regular season. So people are now starting to handicap these 4 teams. The Canucks still have an Eastern trip to go on, a 6-game trip. In fact, it ends in your city here in a couple of weeks after they're done with the New York City metropolitan area clubs. So the Calgary's in the midst of their Eastern road trip, right? They're at the Garden tonight to face the Rangers after Toronto. So Vancouver and Calgary have a more difficult road to hoe here compared to St. Louis. And then there's that Utah club. And guys, I'm not sure the last time you saw Utah play, but boy, really starting to like that team. Their young forwards are scoring more. Keller in particular. Gunther's just a terrific goal scorer. And they got scoring at the top. They got big physical checkers in the bottom 6. and they're doing okay at goal prevention here of late. So, yeah, it's going to be a fascinating race down the stretch. And, for the Canucks, it's a question of, can you score enough goals? They have not been a great offensive team to begin with. They got worse as an offensive team after they traded JT Miller. And I'm not sure you saw it Saturday, but late in that game, Jason Dickinson with a pretty borderline hit on Philip Hedl. That's another concussion for Philip Hedl. He missed the game Sunday. We'll see what his status is here for tonight. But the Canucks don't have a lot of goals in their lineup. So, you're looking at a team that's got to win sort of 2-1, 3-2 games from here on out.
I guess if everyone or if anyone was hoping that Elias would just put the team on his back after JT was out the door, they have moved on to plan B right now. Where's the where's Paterson?
I mean, he wasn't very good going into the Four Nations break. He wasn't very good coming out of the Four Nations break. 5 of his last 17 games have been very healthy. In fact, 5 of his last 7 games, we have seen the Elias Paterson of old, a guy who can drive play, a guy who is both a creator and a finisher. And that was lacking Sunday. But even in some of the games of late where he hasn't registered a point or he hasn't, put up big totals offensively, he's been part of the solution. So, yeah, so many of their eggs are in that basket right now with Elias Paterson. And here's the thing, Hustle, I have to correct you now, because we have an Elias Paterson on the team and we have an Elias Paterson. This rookie defenseman. No, I kid you not. I kid you not.
Okay, is that how you?
That is not how we differentiate. Elias is number 40, the centerman. Elias is the rookie defenseman, although he's been healthy scratch the last couple of games. And just for good measure, we have a Marcus Paterson as well. So our RIP to the play-by-play guys and having to figure this out in live time, because it's confusing enough for all of us who have the time to
might I suggest maybe we mix in a nickname or something like that, an initial.
So Elias Paterson, the fan base has called him DPD. So it's PD for number 40. We've been calling the defenseman DPD, but Rick Tocchet and the crew now down in the room now call him Junior or Junior PD. And Marcus Paterson came over from Pittsburgh and he went, my nickname was Petey. So I don't know what you guys want to do with that. So now we're calling him Marcus Paterson. His other nickname was Dragon, but there was a famous goal here in 2011 where Alex Burrows got them through the Chicago Blackhawks. And that's called the Slay the Dragon goal here in Vancouver. So we're like, you can't even be Dragon because we slay dragons at this rink. So you're just going to have to settle for Marcus Paterson.
Just speaking of all of that, and Paterson coming in and Hedl and JT out, like it's basically been a soap opera around this club for the better part of this season. Has the temperature cooled since JT left? And other than the stress right now of being in the middle of this very tight playoff race with 3 other teams, since we last spoke, how have things changed, and what is the mood around this hockey club?
Honestly, buddy, I have done so many out-of-market interviews this season, far and wide, like every Canadian market several times over. The Vancouver Canucks are the White Lotus of the National Hockey League. Things that you've never seen before on your screen, things that you never expected to see happen with this hockey club. To answer your question, for the most part, yes, it has cooled down since the JT Miller trade, and particularly since Elias Paterson picked up his act a couple of weeks ago. So this has been a rare period of calm for the Vancouver Canucks. But the other issue they have here is Rick Tocchet and his future, the reigning Jack Adams winner. And there is a mutual option on his contract, fellas, for next year. So the Canucks can exercise that option, and Rick Tocchet could say, well, I'm not exercising my option, and walk away. Rick Tocchet could exercise that option, and the Canucks could say, well, we missed the playoffs, or we didn't score enough goals, blah, blah, blah. We don't like your style of hockey, and walk away. Then there's the messy business of a contract extension. Is that something the Canucks are willing to do? They have been one of these franchises that had been paying multiple coaches not to coach, so ownership's a little bit chilled there. Or are they just going to flat dismiss him? So there is a building drama here, like all good, serials, cliffhangers. We've got a building drama with the head coach and his future. But given the standard and the bar that was set earlier this year, this is a period of relative calm.
And I'm glad you brought up Tocchet, because I wanted to go there, and you laid it out pretty well, as far as what could and could not happen. I guess my question is, the guy won the Jack Adams.
Yeah.
He's a great leader of the team. I would assume that the team would want to keep him around. What I'm unsure of, just after everything that's happened, Tocchet doesn't seem to be a guy that loves drama, and there has been so much of it, and I do wonder if just the situation and everything with this team has soured him on this opportunity.
Well, that's it. Is with everything that he's put up with, is he fed up? Does he just want a change of scenery? Because let's face it, even though there are new players here who have brought new energy, he would have to go back to coaching a lot of the guys that have, caused him so much trouble this year. The other thing is, we're now into an era, fellas, of ex-player coaches who have done pretty well for themselves financially as players, don't require coaching as much as some of the, coaches of yesteryear did. That is particularly true with Rick Tocchet, because he's also been a television guy. And of course, you don't lose any games when you're on the TNT set. And, then there's the other possibility of, is Rick Tocchet done enough here in Vancouver, or certainly during his Jack Adams seasons last year? And guys, truly one of the great coaching jobs I've seen in 25 years in this business, in any sport.
No doubt.
Last year. Did that float him enough in the eyes of other general managers and owners that there might be opportunities out there for him, and opportunities to start fresh without the baggage that he's got here in Vancouver with a number of these players and all they've been through?
Speaking of those players, that you mentioned, Petey, number 40, we'll go with
Correct.
that. There was a lot of talk that, he might be gone. They ended up trading JT Miller. Is there any, because his no move, I believe, kicks in on the 1st of July. What are the chances he's a Canuck on the 2nd of July?
I think a lot of that is to be determined here in the final 15 games, and then if they get to the playoffs. Now, that said, an Elias Pettersson trade from here is very difficult for this franchise. And I just don't mean emotionally and breaking ties with a, drafted and developed, one time viewed as a franchise player here. I mean, you've already traded out a top 2 center in JT Miller. You did not get a top 2 center in return. A couple of years ago, they had 3 top 2 centers with Bo Horvat as well, who they moved to the New York Islanders. So can you really trade a third top 2 centerman in a period of 2+ years? Because you're going to have to return at least one top 2 center. And that still puts you on the hunt for a second line center, which is where they're at now. So, couple that with an $11.6 million contract that runs 7 more years. And, the fact that he will not be coming off a great season, even if he does outstanding work here the final 15 games in the playoffs, this will not be high value for Elias Pettersson. So can you execute that trade and still have a competitive club? And the reason why you need a competitive club is that Quinn Hughes has 2 more years left on his contract, and everything about this franchise after they traded JT Miller is operation keep Quinn Hughes happy, and hope and pray that a year from this summer, you've got a team that Quinn Hughes feels good enough about that he's willing to sign an extension here. If you move Paterson from here, boy, you need specific pieces in return, but you also need a step forward season next year. with regards to Quinn Hughes and getting his name on a contract.
You mentioned Quinn Hughes, and I think the nature of the Canucks being on the West Coast, the games being later, we don't hear from the players as much maybe out east as we do, the Toronto guys that are on the start of Sports Center every night. How has he handled all of this? Because he's the captain.
Yeah.
He's the leader. He's the best player on this team. And he's dealt with a lot of bullshit this year, Matt.
Yeah, he has. Yeah, he has. Two players who couldn't get along, and it started affecting the team. They not only affected each other, they affected the team. To one point where, Rick Tocchet split them on the power play just to show them how, silly they were being. So, look, I think it was very difficult for him at the start. And I think it was very difficult for him because JT Miller was clearly the alpha male in that room. And Quinn Hughes was a new captain and a relatively young captain and more of a soft-spoken, lead by example type captain. I do think he has found his footing here, though. And I do think this has been a big step for him and growth as a leader. And he's talked about that. And what I also think is that eventually Quinn Hughes came to the realization, much like many here at Canucks Sports and Entertainment, that even if you had to make an unideal trade for JT Miller had to go. He had become a corrosive element in that Canucks dressing room and in this Canucks operation. And I think Quinn Hughes recognized that. I think he recognized that early enough along that he was able to align with Elias Paterson, that he was able to align with the franchise and march forward here towards, hopefully, for their sake, a brighter future. But this was a significant test of his captaincy and of his leadership. And I will bet you all the money you've got in your bank account that leading this club has become a lot easier since JT Miller's departure to the Rangers.
Matt Sekeres joining us from Vancouver ahead of Jets Canucks tonight, 9 p.m. I wanted to ask you about Brock Boeser. Well, really the trade deadline overall. I mean, what was the aftermath of the deadline? And I mean, there was a lot of talk that Boeser might be gone. He's still a Canuck. What's his future? And how? And is this just a matter of, hey, we wanted to keep him because if he's not around, we might have a tough time making the playoffs. Although he might want to mix in a goal or two, Matt.
He might. It's something like 5 points since the start of February. It's 2 points in 8 games here in March. I believe it was 3 points in the 8 February games, sitting on 18 goals, scored 40 last year. Yep, they absolutely kept him because this ownership group has always prioritized playoffs over any kind of long-term build. So Patrick Allvin, the general manager, came out a week before the deadline and said no steps back. No steps back meant they weren't trading Brock Boeser for future assets, even though this was an all-time seller's market, and they probably could have done quite well with future assets on Brock Boeser, who's been a good playoff performer as well into two tours in the Stanley Cup playoffs. I don't think this management group is sold on Brock Boeser. I think that's been indicated with the lowball contract offer they sent him earlier in the season. Although if he continues to struggle, he might play his way into that lowball contract offer. I think there are concerns about Brock going forward in terms of his foot speed. He has always been a slower player. If that drops further from here, boy, that's going to be something that I don't think will age well over the course of a 5, 6, 7 year, even 8 year contract. He's not getting 8 years here. So he probably isn't getting 8 years anywhere. Not to mention his finishing. Like when his finishing is at 40 goals, great. But when his finishing is at 18 goals, tracking, 23 or whatever the case may be, that's a good serviceable player, but that is hardly the frontline top scoring winger that this club needs. So, was there activity on Brock? There was. The general manager made a sort of foot-in-mouth comment after the deadline. If I told you what I was being offered for Brock, I would have to run out of this room. You wouldn't believe me. What I think that translated to was they were solely looking for roster players to be able to replace Brock if they moved him. And this is the first time that they are going to go with a frontline or a premier free agent, whatever you want to call it, through the trade deadline without an extension or a deal. So this is new territory for this management group. I think they're looking to get faster. I think they're looking for someone who brings a more complete effort over 82 games. It's been very difficult on Brock. He's the guy in the room that sort of everybody he moves seamlessly between all factions in the room. Like he was right there with JT Miller. He's been right there with Elias Paterson from the get-go, right there with Quinn Hughes. So he's a beloved figure in that room. I think it was very difficult to see him watch this team get teared apart at the seams. And then I think it's been very difficult for him personally with what he's had to go through this year and the specter of a contract extension, his first time going through this. So total it all up, it has not been a good season for him. He's got 15 plus games maybe to change that, but he's cost himself money compared to what he could have fetched coming off the 40-goal year.
Well, Matt, one thing we can say, never a dull moment around the Vancouver Canucks. And they've got another 15 games to try to pull themselves into that 8th spot and stay ahead of Calgary and the Charging Blues and Utah HC.
Including 2 against Winnipeg, right? And now you start looking at the games and looking at the quality of opponents, and needless to say, this is as quality as it comes in the National Hockey League right now. So a huge test for them tonight on home ice, where they have been dreadful this year, and an even bigger test in a couple of weeks when they wrap up this 6-game road trip with a game in Winnipeg. And of course, I don't have to remind anyone in your audience, the last time these two teams played, Kyle Connor had a hat trick in the first period. So whatever they did last time to the Connor line, they sort of have to do the exact the Costanza approach tonight against Connor.
Matt, always great chatting with you and catching up. Continued success to you and Blake on Sekeres and Price. Folks, check out S&P wherever you get your favorite pods, and of course available on YouTube. And maybe we'll chat again as we get closer to the playoffs and see if the Canucks are hanging around. If they do make it, there's a very good chance that we'll be doing this a few times,
that's
Matt.
The thing. If they make it, I have a feeling we'll be talking a fair bit. Andrew, Michael, thank you so much. Always delighted to join your guys' show. Continued success in your own right.
Thanks, Matt. All right. Great stuff with Sekeres. Always like hooking up with Matt. And I got to tell you, just, on the Rick Tocchet business, if I had to bet right now, I don't think he comes back next year. And that it's going to be much more work. Hard to imagine. This team won the Pacific Division last year. And then everything that's transpired in the last 12 months. As I mentioned, Hammer's coming up in just a minute. Connor's going to join us later on this afternoon from Vancouver after the morning skate out on the West Coast. Before we bring in Hammer, huge thanks to Princess Auto for their great support of Winnipeg Sports Talk. Princess Auto, of course, a huge supporter of so many parts of our sporting community, including, of course, the home of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, Princess Auto Stadium. But Princess Auto was founded in Winnipeg, headquartered in Winnipeg, and now coast to coast across the country, but with 3 locations to serve Winnipeggers and Manitobans. Panet Road, Portage Avenue West, and out in Brandon for our friends in Westman. And again, at Princess Auto, that's where you will find the best deals and the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Everything you need to complete the projects on your list or start something new is at Princess Auto. Pop by and see them in store or shop online 24/7, 365 over at princessauto.com. Hey, speaking of great Winnipeg companies, the gang at Wallace & Wallace have been the leaders in fencing and overhead doors since 1946. If your property needs the security and protection of a new fence, or if winter's done a number on your old one, give them a call. They've got you covered with vinyl, ornamental, welded wire, chain link, wood fences. And if you need a new garage door, as we've heard a couple of WSD listeners in the past couple of weeks, highly recommend you talk to Wallace & Wallace because they got the largest selection of overhead garage doors, one perfect to match your home and add value to it as well. 452-2700 is the number. Wallace & Wallace will be happy to come by and give you a free estimate. You can also check them out online at wallacefences.com or pop down and see them at their showroom on Lousing Crescent off of Keniston. And just before we bring in Hammer, spring is just around the corner, and you know what that means. Graduations, weddings. Guys, if you need to up your menswear game heading into spring, Head on down to 190 Smith Street downtown for the best in custom men's suits starting at $400. Chinos, golf pants, custom shirts, both tucked and untucked styles, and the best menswear accessory selection in town. If you've got a graduate coming up or are graduating, make sure to talk to F about a special discount or a free shirt and tie with the purchase of any suit. And they've got great deals on for wedding parties as well, for the fellas to get done up for the big day. F Apparel, 190 Smith Street downtown. Find out more or set up an appointment online at that's EPHapparel.com. All right, let's bring in our pal Jeff Hamilton as the show continues. Hammer, what's good, buddy? How are you?
Not bad, my friend. Things are going well.
Wait, remote echo. We good?
We good?
No, we still got the echo, although I can't hear Remis.
What?
We got the echo on Hammer there.
Right now?
How about now?
There we go. We're good. We're good.
How about now? How about now?
How about now is great. How are you?
The Office reference. I'm great, man. I'm doing really well. I woke up with some awesome news this morning, actually. I don't love sharing, I don't tell anyone about my birthday or whatever, but pretty proud to wake up this morning and be one of the 3 nominees for a National Newspaper Award for the investigation that Katreena and I did, Clark and I did with the Winnipeg Free Press and looking into childcare in the province. So that was a cool thing to wake up to this morning.
Congratulations.
And back at it. For work. Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it. Shower me.
Some of your work. Yes, shower. Well, listen, I know you kind of come and play with us in the toy department of media, but you have done some very important work on others, and it's great to see you and your colleague recognized for that.
Really cool.
Last week and the week before, there was so much talk about the trade deadline, and after the deadline, and this is natural. I mean, I might have been as disappointed, but as guilty as anyone for talking about Brock Nelson. And listen, there's a reason why we were. It was very clear the Jets were in on him, and were doing their best to get him. And he didn't end up coming here, and he went to, the Colorado Avalanche. And then, of course, Mikko Rantanen comes into town, which I think was part of the amazing buildup last week going to Friday night's game. And Jeff, for people that still have questions about this Winnipeg Jets team, of what they've been able to do so far, what's to come forward, and listen, nothing is guaranteed. We all know through the Stanley Cup playoffs, there's a lot of great teams, and only one ends up holding the trophy. Mm-hmm. But I got to tell you, just from talking to fans over the course of the weekend, the response to their performance against Dallas, considering the buildup, considering the leverage of that game and what was at stake and how comfortable they are right now back at the top of the division and the Western Conference, been a very, very good week for the Winnipeg Jets. And I think legitimately exciting a lot of people as to their current situation moving ahead to the playoffs.
Yeah, they're weathering mini storms, right? At the time that you want a team, particularly a team that's in first place in the NHL and first place in the Central Division, to weather storms where, of course, every game counts for the same amount of points. But when you look at the standings and you look at the Dallas Stars creeping up there, and then you add on the additions of, Mikko Rantanen and others across the division, there was a lot of concern, a lot of worry, right? That the Jets would take a step back, that all of a sudden dominance or their place in the Central Division was all of a sudden being not just questioned but strongly questioned. And I say weathering storms because I'll even go a little bit before the trade deadline, Huss, right? They started, they've been going on pretty well, lost 3 games in a row, and there was almost kind of this, I want to say panic, but almost this concern about what's going on with the Jets. Are they going to get things done? And that was easing into the trade deadline, obviously. And now you look at what they've done; they've reeled off 5 wins in their last 6 games and really figured that out, got in and through the trade deadline, added a couple depth pieces that are already been leaned on this season, and they're looking like a pretty good team. I also, I don't think that the Jets are, certainly they're, looking at the Central Division, and of course any team would love the President's Trophy, but that's the part where where I think the Jets, I don't want to say need to be careful. It's a funny comment to even make given where they are in the standings, but like the President's Trophy doesn't really matter. You know what I mean? Like it's cool. It's awesome. It's certainly, for fans in Winnipeg, a badge of honor. And what I say by that, I'm not saying it's meaningless. Of course it means something, and it would include a banner, at the arena. But at the same time, if it's at the cost of where the energy levels of Mark Scheifele is or Kyle Connor, like I guess my point is that they've separated themselves here. They need to continue to collect those wins, stack those wins, and really cement their position atop the Central Division. But that victory against Dallas, I think, puts them in a really good situation where they need to play solid hockey, but they also to realize anyone who's banged up or bruised at this time of the season might need some, maintenance, if you will, hang in. And, if the Jets can continue to play that style of game, continue to carve out victories, I think they'll put themselves in a real good position at the end of the year, that they're not desperate to win the division. So we'll have to wait and see that. But obviously good news, and the good times are rolling here with the Jets.
Yeah, you make a great point about the President's Trophy. And listen, all year long, when it looked like, and again, it still didn't seem realistic, to be honest, at any point that this team could have such a big lead at this point in both the division and the conference. But the idea was that at this point, if you can put yourself in that situation, you do have some wiggle room. You want to give Helly an extra day off, you can do that. In a final week or so of the season, to your point, you want to give Scheifele and Kyle Connor a night off and maybe give a couple players from the Moose or a couple guys that haven't been in the lineup a chance to play to get ready for the playoffs. It's great. Listen, I want all the banners. The Central Division banner is going to look great up there, assuming that they're able to hold on to it. Mainly because they should have had one in 2019 and blew it. And listen, the 2018 season, they were the second best team in the National Hockey League. Unfortunately, the Predators were the best through 82 games. And we know what happened in the playoffs. The Jets were able to win, but then fall short against Vegas. So what they're trying to do right now and what their goal is lock down the Central and lock down the West. The funny thing is, Jeff, the President's Trophy race is basically a two-horse race right now.
Totally.
I mean, it's the Winnipeg Jets, who've played 68 games and have 98 points, and the Washington Capitals, who are going to be here next week, who are 2 points back with a game in hand. Now, I'm with you. I don't think either of these teams are going to empty the tank in game 80, 81, 82 if they don't need to win the President's Trophy. All things being equal, would I rather the team finish first and get it and have potentially home ice if they were to meet that team in a 7-game series? Absolutely. I mean, you're not tanking games because you're worried about winning the President's Trophy.
President's Trophy and home ice advantage is classified that under a very good problem to have.
Yeah, exactly. But realistically, it is about the West. And when you look at it right now with what they were able to do on the weekend, Dallas losing to Colorado, Dallas is third overall in the National Hockey League by points. They're 11 points behind the Jets right now in the division. So it's pretty clear. You continue to take care of business, stack up a few more wins. I don't think that they'll go record chasing. I mean, to your point about what could be at stake, if they were in a dogfight right now and Connor Hrabchak needed to keep playing, he could potentially set the record for wins in a season, which would be an all-time incredible record. But again, it is the opportunity cost to doing this right now. Pretty clear that with the recent play and that big win over Dallas, they have a vice grip on the West and on the Central Division. Staying there is going to be the key, and taking advantage of what they've done so far, to your point, in this final month of the season, and being ready not only to come out with great performances in round one, but hopefully have enough to carry them potentially all the way for the banner that really means the most, and that's the one that you get if you win 4 rounds in the playoffs.
Yeah, welcome to the fight, current battle inside the head of Scott Arniel, Huss. That's ultimately what he's going through right now, and I think the Jets have, like I had mentioned before, have won 5 of their last 6 games. They're on a bit of a run here right now, and I wouldn't be surprised. The Jets managed to pull out that victory against Seattle. I wouldn't be surprised that over their next loss if Scott Arniel isn't maybe a bit uncharacteristically harsh, just as a reminder that continue the hard work now. I'm not saying he's going to, lay into his players, but I think he's pushing right now that exactly what you're referring to. I mean, the playoff pictures, and, it's pretty clear for the Winnipeg Jets, but there's still, to use a weather reference, chance of cloudiness, right? Like there's those lingering clouds in the background that are threatening, a bit of a storm. But with more victories that the Winnipeg Jets collect, those clouds will continue to retreat into the distance. And that's when you can start to really take a breath. Right now, the Jets really aren't in that position because, as you mentioned, yes, the West is super important to get, to get that home ice advantage throughout the conference, but particularly that Central Division. And it just so happens that the team that's chasing, one of the teams that's chasing them, if you will, is not just for the division, but also for that President's Trophy. So that being said, if Dallas was to even threaten for the division, you'd have to think that, unless Washington fell off a cliff, that they'd probably walk to that. Anyway, it's just a long roundabout way of saying, yeah, it could be very much in sight, right? You could continue to play these next 5 or 10 games, put yourself in a prime position to focus on maybe not exerting yourself to the full extent and certainly not feeling the desperation that other teams will as they're jockeying for position and standings. But it does give you the opportunity to do something that's never been done, here in this city, and really to put, another feather in your cap, if you will, that's in what's been a terrific season, all those things, right? I mean, that's probably got to be the end message here. It's been the message all year, is that do the right things and you'll get rewarded for them. Do the right things, and Connor Hrabchak puts himself in a good position to set the new franchise record, the league record for wins in a season. Keep doing, keep your head down and keep doing the work. You'll clinch the Central Division, and again, same thing. We'll put you in a really good opportunity to win out not just the conference, but the NHL as a whole. And I think that's the process you need to take. That's the process the Winnipeg Jets are taking. You're going to hear that, one game at a time. But they're aware. They know what's at stake here, and they understand all the things that we're talking about right now. That it's game whatever, right? 60 something. Getting into 70 something of the season, it's time to really, focus on those details and play a solid game. As you mentioned, the Jets don't need to win 10 games going into the playoffs, but they want to like their game, and they want to be able to, look at it and be able to be proud of their game. And I think we've seen just that. And if they can do that, again, all those good things will follow, if not one or all of them, to benefit the Jets by the end of the year.
Yeah. And I mean, listen, looking ahead to the playoffs, as I mentioned, you have 2 of the top 3 teams in the division. The Colorado Avalanche are just 2 points back at Dallas. I mean, by the time this finishes up, it's not impossible that 3 of the top 4 teams in the NHL could be in the Central Division, which reminds me of the old Smythe division back in the day. No one
Which
ever
reminds you of the Atlantic division. I mean, other divisions for years, right? Like, I mean, they all go through the turn. The Central's been a tough division for a while. I want to say it's dropped off, but now it's kind of back. Those fluctuate, right? I mean, those are tough. It doesn't matter what division.
Well, that's the thing. I guess my point is that nothing is going to be easy. As much as at times the Jets have sort of made it look easy with the the winning streaks and whatnot, we know that that's getting raised a level. And one of the common refrains we hear from people outside of the market, even some here, is that whatever, wake me up in the playoffs. Oh, this team is not going to do anything in the playoffs. I actually think, Jeff, and again, this doesn't 2 years, and the way they went out in the first round, I think helps them this year. I think it's helped them throughout this season, and I absolutely think it'll make them more prepared, more weary, and frankly, more able to weather the ups and downs of a series, knowing that there's a lot of great teams. You got to learn how to handle losing and take the lessons from it. And I'm not sure there's been a better example in recent history of a team that's taken their L's, licked their wounds, came back focused, and put their best foot forward night after night after night. And I think that's a really good thing for the Winnipeg Jets, having some of that history. They've got a lot to prove. They've played like they've had something to prove all year long, and I don't think that's going to stop after game 82.
I'm not going to try to sound like a therapist, Huss, but the Jets are in a good place, right? They're in a good place. I'd say the biggest lessons from, from the last 2 years, outside of the heartbreak endings, is the need and importance of being consistent day in and day out, right? It's the understanding that it's not easy, that it's not going to come easy, that if you're going to win a Stanley Cup championship, it's not going to be on the backs of 1, 2, 3 players, that you can't, because it's a very tough mental game, right? I mean, it's when things are going well for you. Yeah. You're on cloud 9 and you love coming to the rink and you love everything about your life. And why wouldn't you? Right. And then in those moments where things aren't going well, you then get guys on their own agendas. You get guys starting to do things outside of the structure of the team. You start getting outside influences added in. And then this year, the results have just backed up. That consistency is the most important thing. And the other thing, we've talked about this on several different occasions, is this, the level of consistency of producing. Like it sounds elementary to just be like, to reduce this team to looking, being a player on the bench and looking down and seeing who's going to step up and do something. You now can look on the bench and there's 7, 8, 9 guys that have the ability to change a game, right? And have shown this year that they're consistent enough to do it. And that obviously includes Connor Hrabchak in the top line, but I'm also talking about a 4th line energy line. I'm talking about Adam Lowry and that third trio and what they're going to offer, right? They're built now. And whether you ask yourself again, like, well, what's the big difference from last year to this season? And it is that experience, right? Some people take longer to learn those things. And like, I obviously understand, the anxiety or the paranoia from some sector of the fans who look at, okay, well, show me the playoffs, and that's going to be the ultimate test. But here's the thing, Haas, that pressure is on every team every single year. So this idea that it's like, show me in the playoffs, yeah, absolutely show us in the playoffs, because a President's Trophy win is great. Look at Boston. Right? Boston set the, league record and was awesome, and then lost in the first round. No one's talking about that team anymore. No one cares about that team. They'll be in the record book, but no one's bragging about that team or talking how great they are. If anything, there's negative connotations attached to it. So those level of expectations, well, probably heightened in Winnipeg, given their, recent experiences in the postseason, is high everywhere. And but to your point, I think there are little things that, I think last year you looked at it and you thought, okay, this team's prepared, they're ready. And I just think this is similar feelings to that, but you're seeing a bit more. You're seeing different things. They're not messing with, they added 2 depth guys, which are not, which could prove to be the right moves, right, or lack thereof. By the end of it, if they lose in the first round, you're going to look at the trade deadline and say that the Jets didn't do enough to get over that hump. And that's the the unfortunate part about sports, right? Is that you can't predict the future. There's no guarantees in anything. And while you can look at a team like the Calgary Flames or Utah or even Vancouver and view them as much inferior to the Winnipeg Jets compared to the likes of Dallas and Colorado, but you can't just sleepwalk your way through the playoffs. You're going to have to show up and play a heavy game. And I don't think anyone's going to give you a free pass. So the Jets have done enough to kind of dictate their future here. And that's obviously a good thing. But, if they end up playing, a more challenging opponent in the first round than first expected, it might be disappointing, but I don't think it'd be all that shocking.
No, listen, I mean, I think we always kind of thought, Calgary, Vancouver, and I personally would love to see one of those teams. I think you'd see a lot of Jet fans traveling for some of the games. It would make it a lot easier. The way things have been going lately, I think it's more likely that it is Utah or St. Louis, and I think both of those teams would be a tough out. I mean,
all of a sudden you got goalied by Binnington. You know what I mean? Like, it's just
remember Vejmelka? I mean, we all remember that guy too, for that matter. He's got his new contract, and they play the Jets really tight so far this year. I mean, really, the last really bad game the Jets had was that one where Arnold went a little bones after the game, and then they just rattled off another eight wins in a row. But the bottom line is that is, regardless, and full respect to those teams, if you make the Stanley Cup playoffs, you're a good team. You got a chance and a chair at the table. But it ain't Colorado and it ain't Dallas. And those two teams playing a potential 7-game war is
more
definitely
specifically,
the
it ain't
best
Nate
path.
McKinnon. It ain't, Mikko.
Yeah.
It's not, you don't looking across the ice at a team that also has, a handful of game breakers, right? Yeah, I mean, that is but you're going to meet one of them eventually, right? It's just going to, probably be in the second round. And that's, you can hope that they get beat up or whatever in the first round, but you're going to take your licks in the first round too, regardless of who you're playing, especially if you're playing the Calgary Flames in St. Louis. Because last time I checked, Huss, they weren't really built off superior elite talent. They were built off hard work and effort, and that would be a tough series.
Yeah, and just coming out at the deadline, it sure looks good right now for the Jets. Tana's been a great addition. That fourth line has been really impactful, and I mean Luke Schenn has come completely as advertised. And then you've got other players stepping up. I mean, Dylan Samberg, the way he's played all season long, but especially in the absence of Neil Pionk, getting a chance to show maybe a little more of his offensive chops with goals in the last 2 games has been big. But really, I mean, the entire trade deadline conversation is going to surround this number 2C position. And with Nikolai Ehlers and Cole Perfetti playing and producing the way they are, that will not be a conversation unless that line is not able to get it done. And they certainly seem like they're at another level than where they've been in the past. So all systems go. We've got the Canucks tonight, Oilers, then Buffalo at home on Sunday, and then the big game next Tuesday with Ovechkin and the Capitals coming for what could be a game that potentially decides, who will be first overall. But listen, while we're here, it has been really quiet on the Bomber and the CFL front lately. Can't have you on without kicking tires and seeing where you're hearing anything on the Bombers, or it's just basically business as usual as they get ready to begin the process of putting the team together and beginning an opportunity to get back to the Grey Cup for the 6th straight year, and this time do it at home.
Yeah, I know I've come on in the past and been like, oh, this is surprising, or oh, crickets, or like, why haven't they done more? Like, I think, just to harken back to some of those conversations, I mean, they were willing to, bid adieu to the likes of Terrell Ford, of Kenny Lawler, and yeah, those are the things that stick in the mind of fans. But they still have a decent roster. They got the combine coming up here in Regina this weekend, and then they have obviously training camp, which is just feeling closer and closer to us. It's just right around the corner, right? You got that and the global draft before that same day as the CFL draft. So there's work being done, but the focus is on those items. It's not on bringing another player in. Like, I mean, that's the thing. I think what's going to come to define this season, Huss, and you could probably make that argument across the entire league, is the pickups that they did make, right? Let's not forget the Stearns and the Dylan Mitchell and other guys, right? Like, those are guys that they've added. Vaughters, right? Like, these are other guys that are well known, in their league and their old markets. We'll see what happens with that. And then, of course, you're relying on a relatively new-ish. Obviously, Danny McManus is still in the driver's seat of a scouting team, right? We'll see what fruits can bear from the scouting group. Maybe there's another Evan Holm in the mix, to take over for Tyrell Ford. Maybe there's other standout players, another Ontario Wilson, right? Like, that's their job, is to unearth those.
Well, especially in the secondary,
right?
This group. And again, like, I don't know how much Ted Gavaya was involved. He's not there anymore, and whether that's more of a challenge, I guess we will see. But I mean, you think of bringing in the likes of, D. Alford, who came in. I mean, like, they brought in 15 DBs to camp, and then all of a sudden, by the end, you got an all-star and a guy that's in the NFL a year after. I mean, they have been successful in that, and I think, when we look... That's
probably why they make those decisions, right? They make a decision to let go of Kenny Lawler because they've found Ontario Wilsons and Dalton Schoens in the past. They let go of Terrell Ford because they've found the likes of, those guys you just mentioned, Evan Holm, those guys, right? So, like, yeah, I mean, that's what they're supposed to be doing. It's just, I think what gives this year a different feel, Huss, is that, I wouldn't say obviously not a full-blown breakup, but this is kind of like the early stages of a breakup of the previous regime, if you will, right? Which is going to have some growing pains. There was growing pains last year as Mike O'Shea addressed the entire team as he does ahead of every season, but his message was much different. It was, this is going to be different. It's going, and it was his way of saying, he didn't want to say it was going to be more difficult, right? Like, he didn't get into those kind of things because he didn't want to say, he doesn't think that way, right? He's not telling his players that this year is going to be tougher, whatever. He's just saying it's going to be different than in previous years. So they shook some of that, maybe a bit more than fans are aware of. But this year it kind of, it led to a handful of household names, people who have close relationships, the Adam Bighills, again, Lawler.
Well, I wanted to just quickly ask you, I mean, like Lawler and some of those guys, but Adam Bighill was a cornerstone of this franchise and he's gone. How much of an effect do you think his absence will have on the team? And I mean, with him and his leadership, his aura being out of the room, it does leave a big gap and a need for other guys to step up and take some of that leadership, if you will, because Adam Bighill had a lot of it.
Yeah, the truth of that, Huss, is we're not going to know until we find out. I mean, it could be easy to say, taking out a guy like, Adam Bighill, a staple with this organization, a guy who won a handful of most outstanding defensive players, a guy that we know brings a level of professionalism unlike anyone else, arguably, in the Canadian Football League, to a team. And so, yeah, you could mention all those things and follow that up by saying that the Bombers are going to have lost that level of, of leadership and whatever, right? I'll remind you of last year, right? You look at Jamarcus Hardrick. He was a big guy in the room, right? Like, he was a guy that, everybody loved and wanted. He moved on, right? Those personalities, Jackson Jeffcoat, he wasn't the most outgoing guy in the media necessarily, but he was certainly played that, a role of leadership in the locker room. And so, you look at, and then it's kind of ironic, Huss, if you look at the impression that Adam Bighill has left on his teammates, many of whom have been around, for 1, 2, 3, 4, more years, and it's their turn to take over that, example and be that person, right? I'm not saying that everybody you end up overstaying your welcome. I'm not suggesting that Adam Bighill was, overstaying his welcome by any means, but I would suggest that over time you need to make tough decisions. And when you look at Adam's history, when you look at Adam's injury from last season, how much can you expect from him? I think maybe some people thought he would come back as a coach. I'm not saying that that's not a possibility. I don't think that's at all in the works, for one reason and one reason only, Huss, and that's because Adam Bighill wants to continue to play football. But I do think it says something now that he doesn't have a contract with anybody else. Now, I'm not saying that he hasn't been talked to by other teams or offered things. We know that his family lives in Winnipeg. We know that he has a job here, a full-time job here in Winnipeg. But he's not ready to end his career like this. Anyone that knows Adam Bighill knows that he's not going to want to end his run in the CFL is for sure first ballot Hall of Fame career off of an injury. So he's going to want to get that chance. There's part of me that's a little surprised that Winnipeg didn't give him that. But Winnipeg has given him a lot of years. He's given back a lot back in return. So it's one of those things. It's tough, but you need to move on, right? I also don't think Adam Bighill is looking to take a pay cut or anything of the matter, right? Like, I mean, and the other thing I mentioned too, which a point I never finished off, was other teams offering him a contract. I'm sure those other teams have been talking to him. It's just whether or not it will work for him financially. And also I imagine any team, including the Bombers, obviously here, would want to know what his injury situation is like. To sign him for a year for any amount of money and then realize you don't get him till October, doesn't make a lot of sense. And while, you often want to, you want to trust players and their timelines. They're often unpredictable. And when you factor in Adam Bighill's age, the degree of injury that he suffered, those are knocks against him. Now, again, anybody, and I've written this, you could Google this, Jeff Hamilton, and follow in these words. Anyone that's, willing to rule out Adam Bighill in anything, you do it at your own peril. But at the same time, I keep coming back to, that famous quote by Wally Buono, is that you want to get
it's the unfair part of sports perhaps, but you want to get rid of a guy a year early than a year late. And Adams just struggled to finish seasons, obviously the last 2 seasons.
Jeff, great catching up. We'll look forward to more Bomber talk as we get closer to the combine, the draft at the end of April, and of course, keep our eyes locked on the Winnipeg Jets as they look to finish the job and get ready for the playoffs as the number 1 team in the West. Have a great one, and congrats again on the nomination.
Hey, yeah, thanks so much, Huss, and thanks for having me on. Always love chopping it up. Have a great day. The sun isn't shining yet, but I can see it poking through, so maybe in a little bit.
Good stuff. There's Jeff Hamilton at Jeff K. Hamilton on X, and of course, you can read all of his work over in the Winnipeg Free Press. Shout out to our gang, friends down at Royal Sports. Lots going on at Royal these days with the hockey season, well into playoffs, but speaking of playoffs, Jet fans getting ready for their playoff outfits. If you're thinking about maybe adding some whites to your ready, we can certainly do that. They've got the biggest selection of Jets jerseys, hoodies, hats, toques, scarves, you name it. A lot of white in there, which you might be needing, hopefully for a couple months come playoff time, but certainly in the middle of April for round 1 down at Canada Life Center. While you're there, check out all the NFL gear, everything from around the National Hockey League, Blue Jays and Major League Baseball, international soccer, and tons of cool stuff on the Kings skate, snow, and surf side. Sunglasses, Yeti coolers, and mugs. You got to see it for yourself. 750 Pembina Highway is where you will find Royal Sports. Follow them on Instagram at Royal Sports Winnipeg. Also want to thank our friends at Boston Pizza. Don't forget, gang, we are going to be firing it up Thursday night. Boston Pizza, Garden City on McPhillips, 8 p.m. for a watch party with Boston Pizza and our friends at Little Brown Jug, which is now available on tap at select Boston Pizzas, including Boston Pizza Garden City. Come and join us at 8 o'clock for the Jets and Oilers. We'll have some fun contests and trivia in between periods with some great prizes from LBJ and Boston Pizza. And most importantly, get together with a great group of Jet fans and hopefully see the Jets stick it to the Edmonton Oilers. Thursday night, BP Garden City. We will see you there with Boston Pizza and Little Brown Jug. And speaking of Little Brown Jug, big cheers to our friends at Manitoba's favorite local brewery.
You train day in and day out, learning new techniques, approaching new concepts, and living out the thrill of achieving your goals. Building a craft beer is no different. While you spend your hours on the ice, we spend ours here, brewing our trademark beer. Again, and again. Here's to pushing the status quo and challenging ourselves to build something memorable. 1919 by Little Brown Jug.
All right, coming up in just a couple of minutes, we are going to welcome in 2 of the All-Stars from the Bison Women's Volleyball National Championship squad, Katreena Bentley and Julia Arnold. But fresh off the skate in Van, we're going to be bringing in Connor Hrabchak in just a minute when we get that connection back up. He popped in, and then he popped out. So we'll get to Connor in just a minute. I will tell you, and we will get to the Coolbet lines overall with a couple things. We had a real fun March Madness show today in the Lock Shop. We've got a couple exclusives up, but Jets tonight, not surprisingly favored, minus 163 on the money line. The Canucks, a pretty significant home dog at plus 138. Total for the game is 5.5. And the spread, if you want to take the Jets by 2, plus 167. I think we're going to be focusing in on some Kyle Connor tonight, plus 143 to score. Of course, he owned the Canucks earlier this season at plus 143 for 1 goal and almost 7-1 for 2. Think he'll get another hat trick? 28-1. And wouldn't that be a way to celebrate game 600 in the NHL? Tell you what, Reem, why don't we bring in Katreena and Julia right now? If if we're having a tough time with this connection from with Connor. What do you think?
Sure, that's fine.
Okay, perfect. Listen, so Connor will join us in just a few minutes from Vancouver, just finishing up the skate before tonight's game. But as I mentioned, a great chance to welcome in two of the national champion Bison women's volleyball players right now on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Promised you yesterday we would be doing something today on the national champion Bison women's volleyball team, and we're doing better than that. We are welcoming in right now two of the tournament all-stars and leaders of the national champion Bison women's team, Katreena Bentley and Julia Arnold, to Winnipeg Sports Talk. Ladies, congratulations. What a weekend and what a win for you and the squad.
Yeah, thank you much, and thanks for having us on.
It's a pleasure. You know, we spoke with Coach Ken a couple weeks ago, and we knew that this was a big opportunity. But, you know, with having nationals at home and having such a great squad, it does come with a lot of pressure. Katreena, tell us about the lead into the tournament and the way you guys were feeling, knowing the opportunity at hand, but how many people were invested in your success?
Yeah, I think mostly we just tried to remain grateful rather than feel that pressure. The whole season, I think our main goal was not to look ahead. That was it, at a huge theme. Because it would have been easy to. We had the spot at nationals secured, and it would have been easy to just kind of coast through the season knowing that we were always going to have that opportunity to compete at nationals. But we kept our head down and, yeah, just trying to remain grateful for the opportunity that we had every day to get better and play good volleyball. And, yeah, we tried not to get ahead of ourselves.
Julia, this was, obviously, first and foremost, a chance to win a national championship, but to be able to do it on home court, this was I'm sure, a theme of the entire season for you guys, knowing that it was going to culminate with, a chance to do something really special that not a lot of teams get a chance to do it, and to do it in front of so many friends and family.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the previous 2 seasons, we've lost in the semifinals at nationals. So I think coming into this year, we knew we had this big opportunity ahead of us, and we really started in the summer before the season, just getting prepared and knowing we had this great opportunity ahead of us to do something great at home, to celebrate with all of the fans that have been supporting us the last few years. So I think we really took it seriously, and we put everything we had into this season just to get us to where we wanted to be at the end.
Tell us about the championship match. You win the first 2, and then are on the cusp of winning it and lose 26-24, and now you're going to 4. I mean, if you can, fill us in on the ups and downs of that match, knowing what a quality team you're playing and everything it took to get there.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it after we had lost that third set. Obviously, that wasn't ideal, but national championships aren't supposed to be easy, and you're not going to win them 3 straight, pretty much, not at the time. So we had to just bounce back after that third set. Obviously, Montreal's a really good team, and they made it to the final for a reason. So, yeah, they gave us all they had, and we were just fired up after that third set, and we're ready to go and win the 4th.
Well, you certainly.
You recognize that we lost that third set kind of at our own hand. So I think we went into the 4th set with a little extra fire. Just okay, let's stop messing around. Let's get this done one point at a time.
Well,
so we did.
Katreena, I mean, speaking of being fired up, I'm not sure we've seen a scene at Investors Group Athletic Center like that in a long time. I mean, there's been some incredible moments and events over the years, but I mean, that place was packed to the ceiling, and the passion of the volleyball community behind you guys was something that I think people will be talking about for a long time. You've come up in this community playing from junior Bison volleyball. I mean, how does that environment, that scene, rank amongst the highlights of your career, whether you've been winning or losing?
Yeah, I think for everyone involved, that's going to go down as one of the best moments of our entire life. And we cannot express our gratitude enough to the volleyball community for showing up for us like that. And yeah, it just speaks to the strength of the volleyball community in Manitoba and the sport community, even on campus. There were tons of tons of other athletes that showed up, the track team, the basketball team, the hockey team. They all showed up for us the same way that we would for them if they were in that position. So it was electric, and we could not have asked for more for that night.
Well, and Julia, obviously it's amazing to have that campus support from your fellow student athletes and the students, but it really does speak to the growth of the grassroots volleyball and how prevalent this sport is. And listen, for two homegrown stars like yourselves to be able to achieve a national championship on home court, I imagine will go a long way towards continuing to build the talent of young volleyball players here in the province.
Definitely. I think, and it's also a testament to the championship that the Bisons staff put on. I mean, when they set up tournaments to run the way that they do and have all these fans come out and see the success of them and see how well this championship was put on, I think that'll just foster more interest and more growth for the sport and for the Bison community. I mean, it was just an amazing opportunity just to get that support behind us that will continue further for long past our time.
Katreena, tell us about. I wanted to ask you about the season. When Ken came on, I believe you guys were on a 14-game heater heading into the playoff matchup. You won those, so you won 16 in a row heading into the Canada West Final Four. And then, not that you weren't due, but you lost in that game. Tell us about how the team rebounded from something that hadn't happened in a long time. And did that actually help you guys maybe even be more prepared for anything that might come at you when it came to the Nationals?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, our semifinal, we didn't play a good match. And we never doubted that we were a great team and we were capable of playing like the best team in the country come Nationals. But it was just a really harsh reminder that we can be a great team, but we still have to play well to win. We're not just going to win because we're a great team. So it's, Ken always says it's not the best team that wins, it's the team that plays the best in the moments where you need to play the best. And then come Nationals, we had that reminder, we had that fire, and we did just that. We had 3 very, very strong matches.
To win a championship, it starts, many, many months ago with training and a full season. Julia, I have to admit, I was surprised when I went through your season overall because we knew you guys had this incredible winning streak and, one hiccup and then won the Nationals. You guys started 2-6 on the year. I mean, take us back to the start of the year. Was this was it a bad start? Did you always have the championship aspirations, or was this something that sort of built through a winning streak that was in some ways sort of forged by a start that wasn't up to your standards?
Yeah, I mean, coming into this season, we felt like we had a lot of pressure on us after last season, winning Canada West and then finishing third at Nationals. So I think as we started the season, we had to just reestablish what our team meant and find our culture again. And I think that took a few bumps in the road for us. And playing matches that, again, we didn't play our best volleyball, and that that really just fueled us moving forward. We knew we were a better team than our record showed in the first term. So I think we went to Montreal at Christmas for some exhibition, and coming off that trip, we had established a really good, strong foundation of volleyball again. So moving into our second term, we really just moved forward, and we took all the stuff we learned in the first term and applied it in the second term, and really just we always knew that we could win Nationals, but we just had to get through that bump at the beginning of the season.
It is wild. I mean, on Remembrance Day, during that break in your schedule, you were 2-6, and then Katreena, 16 straight wins from the 15th of November until March 7th, which was your only loss throughout the second half of the season. I mean, it really was a roll. At what point did you guys kind of really feel like, okay, you know what, we are way past that start, and we're building to something special?
Yeah, I think like Julia said, after Christmas, it was just a new opportunity. The start of a new term kind of signals a new opportunity, and like it's a new year. So we could really put that first term behind us and not let it impact us moving forward. The start of our second term and our and our new school term was definitely a fresh start for us.
Bison women's volleyball players, Julia Arnold and Katreena Bentley, national champions, joining us. Listen, you guys finished on a pretty strong note. 2 incredible careers. You're both holders of Bison records. You are products of the Manitoba volleyball community, and you're also sisters, and playing for, of course, Ken Bentley is your dad. Tell us about kind of the family ties between you two, particularly, and you know, the split between dad and coach. Because having been around Ken, and I'm pretty sure you would agree, he is very much all business when it comes to his team and the operation. But again, I mean, you know, the two of you guys being sisters playing for him, I mean, it's just an incredible family story, and really a Manitoba sports story that I think a lot of people are interested in.
Yeah, I mean, we were friends when we were really little, and then that's how our parents met and got together. So we've really grown up together as siblings, but also as best friends. So I mean, finding a way to just exist in all aspects of life. There were trials and tribulations, of course, but we've really come to a good place as sisters and as teammates. So I really wouldn't have wanted to do it with anyone else. I mean, we've really grown up together and been teammates our whole lives.
Yeah, this relationship is unlike, I mean, being teammates, being classmates in school, all through elementary school and high school, being sisters. It's a relationship like I think very, very few people have in their life. So that's something that's really special, and to accomplish our kind of life goal together is just beyond words. And to play for Ken too. I mean, of course, playing for your dad and your stepdad, there's always trials and tribulations again, and kind of finding the way that dynamic works best. But knowing that it's coach and player during the match or during practice, but then after that, it's all love between father and daughter, and you know, recognizing that he was always proud of us as our dad, win or lose, the entire time. You know, he was always just a proud dad at heart.
Well, and I mean, you know, in a lot of ways, at this point, I'm sure to him it seems like not only does he have 2, but probably a group of 12 or 13 daughters that are all part of this family. That being said, though, Katreena, you know, we had Ken on a few weeks ago in his 39th year, going into year 40, in your guys' final year as seniors. I mean, a pretty magical and special way to finish your youth sports career in the fashion you guys did with an actual championship on Sunday.
Yeah, I think both of us, and I mean, our full team really wanted to do it for him too, because he's put so much work into this and has really built us from the ground up. I mean, a couple of our other teammates, Light and Chloe and Juliet Horn, a lot of them have played club for him growing up as well. So he's had a long-standing relationship with more than just me and Juliet, and has invested so much of his time in our club career and our development as young athletes into, you know, young women. So for him, it was not just him wanting to coach us to that national championship, but it was us wanting to play for him and to get him there too.
Julia and Katreena, you guys, congratulations, not just on, you know, what happened on Sunday, winning this national championship, but I mean, you go through the Bison record book, both of your names are throughout it. And of course, there's another Bentley running the show there that is going to be in a lot of Bison record books for a long, long time. But I mean, not only bringing, you know, that title back to the University of Manitoba, but what you guys have done for volleyball in Manitoba. And I think that the legacy of something like, there's a lot of young people that were in that gym on Sunday that I think are going to be turning into maybe the next generation of Bisons and national champions, and who knows where from there. But in the meantime, you guys, appreciate you coming on. I hope Sunday night was as good as everyone imagined it was, and this entire week. And now I guess, Julia, it's time to hit the books and finish off the term strong now that the pressure and the stress of the Nats are done.
Yes, definitely. I mean, we've all taken a bit of a hiatus from school this last week, so time to get back to the student part of student athletes.
Well, listen, you guys, wonderful, and again, congratulations on just an amazing accomplishment as national champions for U Sports women's volleyball. People will be talking about that one for a long time. All the best. Have a great one, and good luck when the exams hit in a little bit.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Oh, that was a great chat. Again, congratulations to Katreena, Julia, Ken Bentley, Rhea Surix, the two-time now Player of the Year, and the entire Bison women's volleyball team on that national championship. What a scene it was at IGAC on the weekend. All right, let's. I'd like to, just before we bring in Connor Hrabchak out in Vancouver. Why not question of the day for Not AutoCorp? Kyle Connor's 600th game is tonight. Would love to know a prediction on tonight's game, but what do you think Kyle Connor's top goal is for, like, best Jet moment is right now? And man, he has had a ton of them. Let us know in the chat. We'll get to some fan feedback coming up in a couple of minutes. Oh, Liz is in the chat too. Volleyball in Manitoba stocks going up. No kidding. Great to see Liz out here. Awesome show on Sunday with Connor, Jacob Stoller, and Connor Hrabchak, who joins us now from Montreal. How about that segue, people? That's how you do it. Connor, what's going on? How are things out on the West Coast?
I'm doing well. This is fun. This is going to be my first ever time covering the Jets away from home. As I was walking into the media entrance yesterday, the Sedin twins walked out, which was like, I was a Canucks fan before the Jets moved back. Like, they were my team growing up, and the Sedin twins were obviously at like the peak of their powers at that time. So that was like a pinch me moment.
Could you tell who is who?
No, I could not. I could not. But anyways, I was like, no way that just happened. And then, yeah, skate yesterday, morning skate today, game tonight. I'm fired up. It's been a blast.
Well, watch out for the Vancouver media. They're a special group. Listen, it should be fun. And listen, just getting a chance to get into that building and see what the Jets continue to do right now. I mean, I know you guys did a great job breaking it down on Sunday before the Seattle game, but I'm sure you've talked to a lot of Jet fans. I mean, it just seemed that game Friday night was such a statement game, from the result, from the way the team played, from the way they were able to really eliminate almost anything that dangerous on Connor Hrabchak. There's a lot of people, I think, that were a little nervous to see how the Jets would be post-deadline against a top team like Dallas. And let's not forget that Rupi Hintz was out of the lineup, and they will get Miro Heiskanen back. But you can only play the team in front of you, and they were clearly the better team. That could have been 4 or 5-0 after the first period if a couple pucks went in. And that's, I think, exactly what the fan base needed. But I won't say that the team needed as much, because this is basically the same group that we've seen since game 1 of the season and that 15-1 start, Connor.
Yeah, I was saying on Sunday Live that I've had issues sleeping after 2 games that I've covered in person at Canada Life Center. The first one was game 1 of the playoffs last year against Colorado, and the second one was last Friday. That was a playoff atmosphere, and maybe not a playoff atmosphere in Winnipeg, because we know that the atmosphere gets cranked up even more. But like, that's like a Toronto playoff atmosphere. What in that building on Friday night? Like, that was incredible. That the building. Kudos to everyone who was there. Like, that was the most charged crowd all season long, no doubt. And on Sunday, Liz, Jacob, and I all agreed that maybe we were headed towards a trap game. The Jets, obviously, with the big emotional win on Friday against Dallas, we all knew how big that game was. You go on the road then against a team that's not really in a playoff spot. Like, you think there'd be a bit of a letdown there. And the Jets did go down 2-0 in the first period, but kudos to them. They bounced right back. Cole Perfetti got a goal late in the first that really sparked them. And we talked to Luke Shen yesterday after practice, and he said, maybe it's human nature to come down a little bit after a game like that on Friday when you beat the second best team in the West and you're the top team in the West, and it has so many playoff seeding implications. Their ability to bounce back in-game, adjust in-game down 2-0 against the Kraken was really impressive to me, because if they went and lost, I think we all would have been able to understand kind of the human nature coming down from that Friday game. But back-to-back really impressive performances from the Jets, and a lot of standout performances from individual players as well.
Yeah, and listen, speaking of individual players, I know we've been talking a lot about Dylan Sandberg. And listen, he's had a monster season, and he had already leveled up maybe a couple times. But holy smokes, the weekend that he had playing with Luke Shen, maybe playing a bit of a different role with Neil Pionk out of the lineup, showing that, he's ready for prime time. I mean, a huge goal on Friday that set the tone for the entire night, and then gets a chance to get out there in OT and wins it against the Kraken on Sunday. The one thing, we've talked a lot about what his next contract is going to look like, and the one thing that he doesn't have is big offensive numbers, and fairly or unfairly, that often is the biggest determining factor when it comes to comparables. But when you look a little bit under the hood right now, Connor, he is so valuable to this hockey club, and we'll see what the number is and how long the Jets can get him signed for, but he absolutely is a priority. He's going to be getting a big raise, and because he's an RFA and doesn't have the numbers, I'm quite confident that whatever they end up settling on, I just hope it's long, because I think it's going to be great bang for the Jets buck no matter where they settle at. Oh, did you mute yourself?
Sorry, yes, I did. Okay, sorry. There's like some beer league game going on here or something, so I was muting myself in between. Sorry about that. Yes, Dylan Sandberg's next contract. We discussed this on Sunday as well. What will that number come in as? What can't Dylan Sandberg do at this point? Like, he doesn't play on the power play. That's about it. He's in overtime scoring goals. He's killing big penalties. He's one of the best second pairing defenseman, number 2 defenseman in the NHL at 5-on-5 this season. Like, he has been absolutely incredible. And I spoke one-on-one with Dylan DeMello yesterday. DeMello has been a guy who's been here throughout Sandberg's whole career and his development coming up from the AHL and things like that. And he told me if there was a league-wide most improved player award, Dylan Sandberg should be at the top of the list. And it's hard to disagree with him. Going from the third pair last year in the playoffs, in and out of the lineup for Nate Schmidt and Logan Stanley, nothing against Dylan Sandberg's game, but then to step up into a top 4 role and play this well is just simply incredible. He's been everything the Jets could have hoped for and more. And Huss, I bring this up every single Sunday because it's my go-to stat, and I know Liz is in chat. She's probably laughing right now. But the Jets are 35-8-2 when Dylan Sandberg starts and finishes a game this year, and they're 11-9-2 without him. So they're like playing at a ridiculous pace every time he's in the lineup, and without him, they're maybe a 500 hockey team, which is crazy to think about.
What do you think the one thing I'll say about the timing, we have to remember when he got hurt, and it was
Steelers too.
And listen, that was at that point of the season where they had by far the biggest meat grinder of a schedule. Not to take anything away from what Sandberg's done,
right?
It is somewhat of a small sample, but we kicked this around yesterday on the program. Where do you think that this contract ends up? I think the Jets are going to want to do it as long as they possibly can. Are you thinking 6, 7, 8 years? And if it was an 8-year deal, like, what's the cost for Dylan Sandberg?
Yeah, this was an interesting one. I do think because he's 26, because he's an RFA, both him and the Jets are going to want to go 8 years. Like, there's really no point not to. You're not going to bridge at this stage of your career. Dylan Sandberg's having the best season of his career in a massive role. This is his opportunity to cash in for a long time. I'll say $6.5 million, $6 million. And I think some Jets fans, maybe some people in chat would even say that's a little bit of a high number based off of what you said, Huss. What GMs like to pay for in their defensemen is time on ice and points and power play production and things like that. That's why a guy like Neil Pionk might get a higher number than a guy like Dylan Sandberg because he puts up more offensive points, right? I don't know. I think whatever they sign him to, it's going to be a bargain. Like, even if they went all the way to 7, I think it's a steal. Like, Dylan Sandberg is so valuable to this team, penalty kill, defensively. I think they're going to settle around that $6 million range. If I had to guess right now, long playoff run could change that. But I don't know. Anything under like $7 million, I think is an absolute steal.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of with you as well. I mean, if they can max it out, it wouldn't surprise me that the number is 6. And I mean, it could be, listen, it could be the Morrissey deal. It could be 6.25 by 8 years. Shake hands and buy a house, and let's look forward to a great 8 more years with with Slamberg on the blue line. Now, of course, we talked a lot about Perfetti. It is Kyle Connor's 600th game tonight. He, of course, had that first period hat trick against the Canucks earlier this year. Rest assured, when I get to the Coolbet lines in a minute, the WST parlay will be represented by Kyle Connor. But you were just down at the morning skate. Tell us about the morning, what you caught from both sides. And I mean, right now it's pretty simple. I think we know what the lineup is. We know the guy that's going in net tonight. But what'd you pick up, and what was the buzz around the arena before tonight's game?
Yeah, a lot of talk about Kyle Connor. We spoke to Mark Scheifele this morning, who obviously every chance he gets to talk about Kyle Connor, he just raves about how good of a player he is, how good of a shooter he is, how Kyle Connor's always in the right spots. And just to quickly answer your why not question of the day, Huss, it has to be his overtime goal to finish off the Edmonton Oilers in the bubble series.
That
correct. Has to be his number one goal.
It would be no question if there were fans in the building. I mean, that entire series.
Yeah.
It pisses me off because it's like that's just been removed from the history. I mean, people will actually say, oh, this team hasn't won anything since 2018. Well, actually, they swept Connor McDavid and the Edmonton Oilers with 3 overtime games, including that one. I'm sure that will be represented when we get to fans first, but I endorse your selection 100%.
And can you imagine what the crowd would have been like for both of those games?
Oh.
The first one, game 3, they were down 4-1. They score 4 goals in the final 10 minutes, or 3 goals in the final 10 minutes to tie it up, and then Ehlers scores an OT. The last game, Kyle Connor scores in triple overtime. Like, we were all up at like 1 a.m. watching that game. That series, if there were fans, it would have been so awesome. But yeah, Mark Scheifele talked at length about Kyle Connor. A lot of buzz around the rink as well as with Dylan Samberg. Like I said, I spoke to Dylan DeMello. We also spoke to Luke Shen, who said something along the lines of, I knew Dylan Samberg was good, but I didn't know he was this good. And he's obviously been playing with him the last couple of games here. I asked Scott O'Neill about Dylan Samberg today, and he said that his evolution as an offensive defenseman or evolving that part of his game has really come along, and you're seeing it as of late. And I know you guys kicked this around on yesterday's show. The Dmitry Filipovich tweet on Connor Hellebuck's save percentage against the West being a 939. I asked Scott O'Neill about that number this morning, and he just took it as another opportunity to explain how valuable Connor Hellebuck is to this team. And said, against the Western Conference, you see those guys more. Connor Hellebuck, been in the league a long time. He's seen a lot of those teams, a lot of those star players in the West. So maybe he's more dialed against the West. But yeah, a 939 against the Western Conference is just incredible. And a lot of buzz around the rink today.
Speaking of Hellebuck, when you were in the press box tonight, you're getting a chance to meet a bunch of your colleagues in Vancouver. Yep. You have one assignment, and that is to lobby for them Hellebuck for Hart. Thomas Drance was on that PDO cast, and I think he's kind of coming around to the brilliance of the season, but we need to really kind of get this going over the final 15 games as Helly continues to do what he's doing. The best thing he can do is keep on winning and keep on, giving up 1 goal or less in all of these games and moving forward. But I do feel like they're begrudgingly, I think a lot of people in the media are like, hey, wait a second. We have to consider what this guy is doing. And the best example of that will be where the team is in the standings coming forth. Well, listen, we'll look forward to chatting with you when you get back. I'm sure you'll have some great stories from the road coming up on WST Sunday Live. And man, I'm just looking ahead. I mean, not to get too ahead of ourselves because we got the big night on Thursday. We'll look forward to seeing you there at Boston Pizza Garden City. But that game next Tuesday, a week today, Ovi and the Caps. And the way things are, we were talking about this with Hamilton. I mean, that could be a game that determines, the President's Trophy winner and home ice throughout the Stanley Cup playoffs. It is just wild that the Dallas Stars are 3rd overall in the NHL, and they're 11 points back of the Jets, 2nd in the Central. I mean, this has basically become a 2-horse race right now.
Yeah, and that game Tuesday night has so many President's Trophy implications, like you said. I'll have to go out and get some sticky notes here in the afternoon and just leave Helly for Hart all over the press box.
That would be wonderful. That would be wonderful.
I'll get it going. But if he breaks or matches the goaltending record for wins in a season, the Jets win the President's Trophy, and he maintains the numbers that he has right now, I mean, how could you not consider Connor Hrabchak for the Hart? He's having one of the greatest goaltender seasons we've seen in the last decade. And that game next Tuesday against Washington, I mean, the first one was an absolute classic this year with Josh Morrissey scoring the OT winner. That game was back and forth and a great game altogether. So I'm looking forward to that one. And let's just hope that OV is like 5 goals away and not like 2 goals away from breaking Gretzky's goal record. I wouldn't want to. Well, maybe I would want to see it. I don't know. People in the chat can
you know what? You think
share their thoughts. Would you want to see
scoring on the MVP? No, he could be one back. And I will be betting at Coolbet no goal for Ovi in that one.
There you go.
That being said, I don't think he'll be there. It'll be interesting to see whether he can get there by the end of the season. I think the odds would tell you it's probably more likely that it's next season at this point, but never count Alex Ovechkin out. Folks, check out the Winnipeg Sports Talk social channels, and of course Connor's as well for more from Vancouver tonight as the Jets take on the Canucks, and travel safely back. We'll see you at BP on Thursday night for Jets Oilers.
Thanks, guys. Have a good rest of your show. It's my pleasure coming
Appreciate
on.
it, buddy. There's Connor Hrabchak with us, repping the WST in Vancouver tonight in the press box at tonight's game. All right, we do have to, I can't wait to get to the Coolbet lines in a minute. But let's quickly go to a little fan feedback from Fans First. Of course, fansfirst.ca, your number one spot for buying and selling Winnipeg tickets on the resale market with no added fees. What you see is what you pay. And I know there's a lot of seats up and around for that game on Tuesday night because major demand for the loan visit from Ovechkin and the Caps. But who knows? Maybe we'll see Ovi and the Caps in June. If the top 2 teams in the one seeds, if you will, can make it through and meet at the end. Just looking at some of the feedback on Kyle Connor. Mikey McBikeface with the correct answer. KC, the sweep overtime goal to eliminate Edmonton in the playoffs. David Aspel, I'd say Kyle Connor's favorite goal is either his first regular season goal or the first playoff goal. And comment, this is an interesting one. Honestly, Connor's best Jet moment was trusting the coaches and taking the demotion to the Moose without complaint. Came back so much better. And of course, he never looked back. And our poor JBM took a stray there from Connor. Whoa, Connor, easy with the Toronto shots. Hey, the Leafs got it done last night. And Ticona Ball, he's saying we love that. Hey, keep them coming into the chat. Fan feedback brought to you by Fans First, by fans, for fans, no fees. Check out the site today over at fansfirst.ca. Hey, I cannot wait to get out to Aikens Lake this summer. We are just finalizing dates to get out to what is my favorite 3 or 4 days of the year, every single year. With everything that's going on the continent right now, a lot of people may be changing some of their summer plans and deciding to stay and spend their money here in Canada and locally in the province. And Aikens Lake is one of the jewels of Manitoba where you can be on the water in just 2 hours from the city of Winnipeg, including your flight out of Silver Falls. World-class fishing and even more world-class hospitality from Pitt, Julie, the Terrence family, and the Aikens team. Find out more on the Aikens experience and availability for the 2025 season by going online to aikenslake.com, and definitely check them out and give them a follow on all the social channels at Aikens Lake. All right, Remo, been a great show today. And man, I had a fun lock shop again. If you're into the madness, and by the way, maybe Remis, you can give people instructions on how to get in the pool if they want. We did a spread draft of 6 games each, head to head, myself, Jake, and Pat, which was a lot of fun. And from that, we actually put together a couple of parlays that you can see in the exclusives right now. They are the Lock Shop Madness dogs and the Lock Shop Madness favorites. So I had the first pick in the draft. You will all be happy to know I did take Simon Hildebrand and a High Point Panthers +7.5 against Purdue. Jake went for Yale +7.5 against Texas A&M. And Patty's underdog is Drake Bulldogs +6.5 against the Missouri Tigers. That is boosted from +568 to +652. And then our Madness faves, I went with Michigan State at -17.5. I believe Jake went with Tennessee, unfortunately against Kyler Filowich and Wofford. But that's a 2-15 game. Wofford's going to be up against it. Tennessee -18. Or maybe that was Patty's. And then the other one was Gonzaga. Was Jake's, now that I think about it, at -5.5. So Georgia, Tennessee, Michigan, all against the spread, boosted from +550 to +663. Those are up in the combo cards. There's a ton for March Madness right now. We've also got a great one. It was a combo. Is this the partner parlay? Is this the for the community? Well, this is what we're cooking up tonight, gang. We've got the Jets and the Oilers to win. Oilers are at home, winners of 2 straight. They're playing Utah, who's just coming off that big win against Vancouver. And of course, the Jets are in Vancouver against the Canucks. So we've got Winnipeg to win, Edmonton to win. And then we've got the 2 favorites in the March Madness play-in games tonight. Alabama State to beat St. Francis. And the much maligned North Carolina Tar Heels to beat the San Diego State Aztecs. That one's +526, boosted up to +605. All of those right at the top of the Coolbet.com page under sports in the combo cards. And of course, we do have a WST parlay tonight. Kyle Connor, 600 goals. I mentioned earlier when we were looking at it, his goal prop +143 to score, just under 7-1 for 2, 28-1 for another hat trick against Vancouver. But what we're going to roll with is Kyle Connor, 2 or more points, Mark Scheifele, 2 or more points, Josh Morrissey to get a point, and the Jets to win. And that one is up for +725. I think a big game for the Jet power play, big game for that top line. Kyle Connor celebrating 600 in style against a team that he has already owned earlier this year. As far as the NHL goes, just back to that game between the Jets and Canucks, still -163 for the Jets as a road favorite. Vancouver is +138. The goal props, I know we were just talking about points in the exclusive, but yeah, Kyle Connor +143 for 1, +690 for 2. And if you wanted to take a swing for another hat trick, again, 28-1. And Kyle Connor is +530 to be the first goal scorer tonight. I don't mind that as well. Other games in the NHL, odds at Coolbet. Ottawa, -135 in Montreal against the Canadiens. This pesky Sens just keep on rolling. The Rangers -250 at home to the Flames, who got beat up by the Leafs last night. Flames need a win, +205. They're in a dogfight for that final playoff spot. Got to find a way to score some goals. The Islanders, a slight road favorite over the Penguins, -112. Pitts -104. Tonight, the East leading Washington Capitals, 2 points back of the Jets with the game in hand in the overall standings, host the Detroit Red Wings. Washington -167. Detroit +141. You've got Dallas -345 faves against the Ducks. Blues in Nashville, a slight road favorite at -115 against the Preds. The Kraken and Blackhawks. Kraken -154 road favorites. And that final game, Edmonton and Utah. Edmonton -147. Utah +125. And the final game of the night is the 9:00 game, Jets and the Vancouver Canucks. Oh, one other thing I should mention for you folks that like the madness. much like Coolbet did for the golf, for March Madness, there is a 30% profit boost available. You've got one to use for the play-in games for today and tomorrow, and then it will reset. So whatever your favorite bet is for the play-in games, just click the green thing. You'll get a 30% profit boost. Your favorite bet for the Thursday, Friday first round, use that. You'll get a 30% profit boost, and so on throughout the tournament. Some great promos right now at Coolbet for March Madness. And don't forget to fill out a bracket in our WST contest, and we'll have, actually, maybe I'll get a couple of Coolbet cards for whoever can win that. We'll put together a few other prizes, but enter that. I'll bring in Remis in just a second. He can let people know how they can register their team if they haven't already and got a link. But it's a busy time over at Coolbet right now. And TGL tonight as well. Give me Atlanta Drive, -110 over the Bay. I feel like a bit of a trader. I started off as part of the Bay Hive. I left, though, and now I'm on Atlanta, the Atlanta Drive with Billy Ho, Justin Thomas, the Dirty Bird Chains. The winner will play New York, who upset LA last night in the TGL because Tommy Fleetwood couldn't sink a damn putt and choked away 4 holes, making me quite angry. And, of course, we do have Major League Baseball. I'm 1-0 on the season, betting the Dodgers run line. I'll probably do it again tonight. -1.5, +105 for the Dodgers and the Cubs. That game starts at 5:10 in the morning from Japan. And then the teams will come back, get back to preseason, and start the season with everybody else with 2 games in the books. Remo, again, Coolbet, use the promo code WST if you haven't played there before. 100% bonus on your first deposit, up to $200. Perfect time to use that for March Madness if you haven't before. Remo, fill people in on how they can enter our bracket. There is a link at the top of the chat right now.
Yeah, pinned comment right now. If you're on the podcast or don't see it, it's in the description. I don't even know how many people we have. Let me check in. I got to do mine. I usually do mine the Wednesday before. We got 15 in there now. So I see some regular chatters. Johnny Bender's going to the game tonight. BA Split's a regular. He's in there. So shout out to everyone who's filled it out. Oh, Coachy51. Big Uke from YEG. So
Uke.
Bunch of familiar names. And Wicked John just filled it out. Said, I randomly picked winners. I don't know basketball. And that's the best way to do it. That ensures you're going to have a good bracket. So
I joked with the guys going into our spread draft today. And like Patty and Jake are pretty sharp. They, obviously with their work, they pay a lot of attention to everything, but especially they've just always been college football guys and now college basketball. And I said, selfishly, I was glad to be able to do the draft with those guys to hopefully help me be a little bit more educated on the bracket when I put it together. But it never fails. All the guys that know everything end up getting whacked in the first weekend. And, it's Hilda from accounting that just randomly filled out a bracket that ends up winning the pool at the end of it. So that's just all part of the madness. But I can't wait for it. Couple games tonight. We put that on our For the Community with the Jets and the Oilers this evening. That's up in the combos, and we'll have much more coming up over the course of the next few days. Lock Shop tomorrow. We'll dive into the Valspar, myself and Pat Gregoire, and more in the hockey. If you are listening to the podcast, we'll throw a link in the description for today and tomorrow for the March Madness pool. Ty Petcow, how about this for a comment for fan feedback for Fans First Stream? We were asking the Why Not question of the day today for Not Autocorp as to what is Kyle Connor's best moment with the Jets. Most of us, myself included, thought, his OT winner to sweep the Oilers. Ty Petcow reminding us KFC's best moment in Jets history was when he wiped the ice with Sid the Kid's face like a human Zamboni. Who can ever forget the Connor Crosby fight earlier this year?
Yeah, that was pretty wild. So, hey, he's moving up the all-time stats. I know Mark Scheifele's about to set the franchise mark for points. I do wonder where Kyle Connor, lands on that when it's all said and done, and when their careers are over. Like, I don't know what Kyle Connor's next contract is going to be with the Jets, but Scheifele's locked up. I imagine they'll be like 1 and 2 in terms of points. Could they be up there for games played? Kyle Connor started when he was 20, and now he's on game 600. So incredible career so far, and still early, still going. So looking forward to game 600 this evening.
Yeah, listen, we can think about, oh God, what's this guy going to get paid in the future? All that. I mean, all of that's real. All of those are things that the team's going to have to discuss. Right now, though, enjoy the ride. The team's number 1 overall, looking ahead to the postseason and looking to potentially lock up the President's Trophy too, which that banner would look nice at Canada Life Center, along with the Central Division banner, and dare I say the banner that Connor Hrabchak and the boys really want, and that's the one you get for winning 4 rounds in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Great show today. 9 o'clock tonight is puck drop between the Jets and the Vancouver Canucks. We'll be all over tomorrow. Murat Atesh is going to join us. I'm looking forward to having Murat on the program. And then Thursday, watch party, Boston Pizza, Garden City with Winnipeg Sports Talk, Little Brown Jug, and BP. Hope to see you there. In the meantime, thanks to Hammer, Connor, Matt Sekeres, and again, congratulations, Julia Arnold, Katreena Bentley, and the Bison Women's Volleyball National Championships. Great to have the ladies join us today on the show to talk about the big win and ending their legendary university careers with a championship on home court. That's going to do it for us, gang. Enjoy the game tonight. We will see you tomorrow live at 1 p.m. right here on the Winnipeg Sports Talk YouTube channel. Make sure you're subscribed and hit the thumbs up on your way out, and enjoy the podcast for those of you on the audio feed. Catch you tomorrow, everyone.
Oh my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.